Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mellissa Thomas of Florida National News coming to you with the FNN Business Talk today for your Wednesday, July 29th. We're getting very close to the end of the month here, but thank you so much for tuning in. And today we'll be talking with SISCO founder and CEO, Anthony Zagami. SISCO stands for Security Identification Systems Corporation. But we're going to get into all the details. And of course, this is Business Talk, so you likely may not have heard of the gentleman before, but you have likely encountered the system before. So let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Zagami and the systems as well, because this is pretty ubiquitous, guys. So just a little bit of a quick bio for you. Mr. Zagami has over 40 years experience founding companies that develop security systems and software solutions. His early professional development includes classified engineering and design work in the aerospace industry with companies like Lockheed, Curtiss-Wright, and Grumman. That's how far back that goes. Now we know it as Northrop Grumman. But in 1979, Mr. Zagami founded Fair Security Systems, which developed and operated the largest radio central alarm monitoring facility in the New York area. In 1985, he patented an electronic detection system still used in the corrections industry to this day, which is amazing. In 1990, he founded AVS Engineering, which is a security consulting firm that designed, integrated, and assisted in the installation of high security access control and weapons detection systems for large military sites, including CCTV, perimeter detection, and access controls for a large roster of clients, including the infamous Rikers Island. Yes, that was one of his clients. Bacardi Rum headquarters, and the New York State Department of Corrections, as well as Timex Corporation. Remember Timex watches, guys? Yes, that was one of his clients. Now, he founded SISCO in 1994, which specialized in maritime security and safety systems, so dealing with ships, okay? In 95, SISCO was awarded a fleet contract to supply a solution that would photograph and identify all crew, passengers, vendors, and visitors boarding and deboarding the Princess Cruise Line vessels. So first it began with Princess Cruise Lines, and from there it became the standard across all the major cruise lines. And I mean, practically all of them. Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Costa, Norwegian, Dream Cruises, Celebrity, and the list goes on. Now, so far they have all contracted with SISCO for the A-Pass, which is the patented system that SISCO uses for the cruise ships. SISCO developed and patented what is now known as FastPass, and that is more for the dry folks, the folks that are on land. So if you've ever been in a commercial building, a school, a hospital, and you've had to use a key card, some kind of pass or ID to get in, it's likely a FastPass system that you've encountered to use for that. And of course, for anybody working in corrections, FastPass is used in those as well. And we're going to be talking in this interview also about the impact of COVID-19 and how SISCO has developed a solution to actually address the situation with COVID-19 and the need for contactless systems. So you guys are actually going to get to see a camera demo, sort of, not live, but we'll be able to provide you guys a video clip that shows the full demonstration of the use of the system. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Mr. Anthony Zagami. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Mellissa. Thank you. Welcome to be here as well.
Awesome. Busy man, guys.
Very nowadays, very busy.
I can imagine. So, you know, just jumping right into it, SISCO actually just recently hit its 26th anniversary as of June. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's
talk about that.
It's been an amazing 26 years. It went like lightning, though. Time goes, I guess as you get older, it gets faster too. So, yeah, it's 26 years ago. It came out of the birth of it came out of a trip that I took to Greece, and I watched the boarding process on a Greece cruise ship. And the light bulb went off. My wife and I were on this cruise, and I watched the boarding process. I said, wow, I can't understand how they know who's on these ships. And I got home a couple of months later. I had an idea, and then I took that idea to market. I started to hire a couple of programmers. We developed a solution. And then by luck, I was able to find a client, which was in Princess Cruises, through a good friend of mine, and ended up I ended up getting a contract with them a few months later after they saw a demonstration that we gave them in California. So it was a pretty interesting trek just to get there. A lot of ingenuity and a lot of mistakes along the way, which we found out, as you do anytime you try, you think you know what you're doing, and then you find out that you don't really know what you're doing until you listen to the rest of the day. But one of those, that's what came out of it really, was one of the interesting things was that we listened to their business process, and we got a lot of information from them and Carnival and Royal Caribbean as well, on how they actually do business, because you're changing their way of doing business. That's really what it is.
Right.
Before they were just coming on, people were looking at a card and they were getting waved on the ship, and that was it. There was really no one-to-one identification against a document or anything like that. They had a manifest, but they were moving people at such a rapid pace, it was hard to keep track. So once we figured that out, we realized that here's a better way to do this. We can electronically read cards. We can then put these onto a database. We can take pictures for identification. We can produce reports for manifest reasons for Coast Guard and safety drills, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then the system then manifests itself into not just a boarding system. We started to get into the safety side of it. Later on, about a couple of years later, they were doing these muster drills, and they were checking off people off a checkboard, clipboard, and they basically, said, okay, they were reading a number across the life jacket that just gave them the room number, basically. So they said, okay, room number so-and-so is here, that type of thing. So the only thing we really knew was that the life jacket showed up at the drill. We don't really know if that was the right person or not.
Wow.
So we then moved that forward where we had the identification of the photograph. And of course, we originally started out with large kiosks where people would put a card in, it would show the picture and all that, and they would board the ship. But then we got to the mobile side of this, where we started when a PDA market started to come out and Wi-Fi became popular, obviously, and they were outfitting the ships with Wi-Fi technology. So we took advantage of that and went down to a PDA level at a very rudimentary stage when PDAs were just coming out. So we had our share of issues with that as well, but we then developed it further. So we were able to take that information very quickly and read the card from a PDA device, which allowed them to be mobile instead of having a fixed piece of furniture or something very heavy to move around. Now these things could be basically put in your pocket and walk around the ship with them. So at a location where they would have a muster location, people would gather there, and then the crew member would then read all the cards, and those people who showed up at the drill would then be accounted for electronically. And the most important part of it was who didn't show up. That was before. So when people didn't show up for the drill, then we would print a nice little report out and say, these are all the people that didn't show up. And they would get a nice little invitation to attend the drill privately.
Wow.
So we did a polite knock on the door and said, by the way, you didn't take the drill. Let's go. That type of thing.
Nice.
So, and it evolved. That was pretty much, the product at that time. And we added modules to it, like age check modules for people that were underage that go into discos and alcohol, not allowed alcohol, immigration modules. So there's people, because we had a lot of foreign nationals at these ports, so they had to be checked through the immigration process. So we're able to do that much quicker, much easier, much less stress on everybody. And before they leave the ship, they would get checked, and then they go through our system at another point, and then get flagged if they didn't get their immigration checked. So it moved people very quickly through the process. The whole process is time related. The biggest issue that the cruise lines had that accepted us right off the bat is we're able to process a person in about 4 seconds.
Wow.
Which was unheard of, okay? Because with doing all these checks, you can process somebody very quickly, just look and go. But to do identification, do the count on board, the time and date of entry, those types of things, none of that was done before. So we never really knew what time they got on, what time they got off. It was a guess before, without a paper with trail attached to it. So we gave them all that flexibility to be able to do those things. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So, and I can skip to the COVID-19 type of information if you want to about the cruise lines, or you want to go into
Well, we're gonna jump to a quick commercial break though. Before we do that, we got a couple commercial breaks in our show, so we'll take the first one now for
Okay.
sure, because that was a lot, like giving us the great history and breakdown of how things got started, particularly with the cruise lines. So we're gonna take a quick one, guys, and we're gonna come back and get into some more meaty conversation with Mr.
Okay.
Anthony Zagami.
Terrific.
Yeah. So everyone, continue to stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It takes experience to know the difference in property values. For example, this business is not the same as this business. And this house is definitely not the same as this house. And this, well, this is definitely not the same as this. And that's why it's important to have someone who understands true property appraisals to help our community grow, while making sure everyone pays their fair share. Because experience matters. Re-elect Rick Singh for Orange County Property Appraiser.
All right, guys, we are back with Anthony Zagami, the CEO of SISCO. So there are a couple more questions I did want to ask before we get into the sort of COVID-19 pivot for sure. We're definitely going to get to that for sure. I did want to ask a little bit. I know you touched on it during the conversation about the cruise lines, but do you normally have a process for landing a large client, such as a Princess Cruises? Is there a proposal that you have to draft up? Like, what is normally your process when you're approaching large corporate clients?
Large corporate clients, like the cruise lines, for example, it involves an enormous amount of meetings. The decisions are made by committee, not by individual. So you go through many different hoops to be able to get to the end line, get to the end contract. In the beginning, it was much easier because it was very pointed to a couple of people. But as the industry grew, and the biggest part of this is the IT side of it. IT became a paramount addition to ships. When we started, we had a little server that was about that big. It was a PC. And really, that was it. And they had a point of sale application. So that's the only IT information that they really had on board. So there was one IT operator and a couple of servers. That was it. So ours was a big addition because we had two. We had actually two. We had a redundant server. Going forward, everything runs on the IT platform now. They have fiber backbones, fiber optic backbones. They have all kinds of different things in the IT structure. So it became a very big piece of it. Therefore, many other departments got involved with it because whatever they put on the network had to be certified, had to be this, had to be that. You got to be secret, at compliance with privacy and so on and so forth. So all of the rules and regulations grew as a result of it, and then as that grew, departments grew within these big organizations. So everybody had to touch it. So it wasn't just purchasing and the security officer anymore. Now you had purchasing, IT, and support. You had maintenance, supply. You can name them all. So when you go into a meeting, there was 12 people and had a question.
Right.
So when we ended up, it works, and the marine works a little bit differently than the commercial side of this. But marine, you would go to an event, which is we call it Sea Trade. It's down in Miami every year. They have multiples of these, and you have a booth there, and and all of the cruise lines, circle around, and you'll get somebody's interest, and you start the dialogue. Okay, we happen to know a lot of people in it because we started in the beginning, so everybody kind of knows who we are. So it wasn't too hard to jump from cruise line to cruise line because it was a domino effect anyway. So fortunately for us, I didn't have to do a lot of marketing. I didn't have to go try to figure out who was who to go to get the right people. We already knew who the right people were, and normally we were recommended, go talk to SISCO. They can help you out with this and that, the other thing. So that's the way the cruise industry started. The other side of the industry, where you get the fast pass side of it, which really came out of after a few years of developing the ship process. We've got a lot of ships, and I looked at the marketplace and I'd say, well, it's a niche market. There's only so many ships, and we're kind of taking over the market. We're going to run out of ships, so we need to come up with another product. So I looked at the industry. Access control was dominated very heavily by large companies. There was a lot of people in the industry. So I said, well, what's missing? So what was missing was an electronic way of identifying visitors coming in and out of facilities. And that translated into taking a logbook off a lobby desk, very simplified, to putting a camera, a reader, and a printer there with the software behind it, that somebody could take that photograph very easily. It started off very rudimentary, where you would type the information in, because there wasn't readers back then that read driver's licenses and passports and all of that. And then it transitioned into segments of the industry that started to build devices for that purpose. And we started to acquire them. We started to build our own, actually, that would image the document and OCR the information, but they came out ahead of us. Companies like 3M and Zebra, and a few others I can't remember, but they came out with products that were better manufactured and cheaper for us to buy them off the shelf and go into a manufacturing operation. So we developed to those products. So the process of reading the ID document, whether it be a driver's license, a passport, a green card, a government ID, or whatever, was translated into the computer, into our system, and it would populate the information in the right fields. So therefore, there was no errors made by typing. It was much faster than typing. It happened in a split second. And you're good to go at that point. So we developed all around those types of devices. So now when you go in, you would swipe a driver's license, take a photograph of a visitor, and then basically there may be a couple of questions. Who are you going to visit? You know, that type of thing. They would, where are they? What location? And then you'd add those to the little drop-down box, hit the button, and they would print out a pass and they would go. Now you have full accountability of who came in the building, when they came in the building, who did they go to see, and what time. You know, those type of things. So then you have an exit process as well that can be added to this, so you know what time they left. And therefore, for emergency purposes alone, fire departments, emergency management people love this, because I want to know. I know who my employees are, but I don't know who the visitors are. You know, how do I identify who's still left in the building? So that's kind of how that was the birth of that product. I said that's what was missing from the industry, and we went full tilt into that. And we were one of the first ones to actually go on board with an electronic system that was able to do that. So that actually augmented the visitor process, and it started to become, it wasn't taken seriously in the beginning until September 11th. Right after one of our first installations, it was we did a few test cases, and then we got an installation. NYPD headquarters at one police plaza bought the system, and it changed their whole operation in coming into the lobby, into the rotunda. And then they had three desktops set up so people would come in, and then they had different color badges for inmates coming back in to pick up property or go to counseling or whatever it might be. And then they also had for officers carrying weapons. There was a particular one, or detectives carrying weapons, and then just general public. So they knew just by the color of the badge what the status was of that person. So we set this all up with them and came up with different printing applications for them. So they knew, basically they want to know who was in the building. And then the exit process just tracked everybody out, so that they had an in and out process. And it worked really well. But it was kind of, people were complaining about it. I have to go through this other process again. I have to do this again. Now I have to pull out my license. Now I have to do this, blah, 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 all that. And I said, okay, the people, they wanted it and they loved it. September 11th came. And then, of course, all the barriers up in New York City started to go up around the buildings, and people were afraid to go into buildings without some type of accountability program. So immediately we started getting business from commercial buildings, because it gave the people peace of mind to enter the buildings, knowing that I know who is entering my building. If they were afraid of terrorists, they were afraid of people with, might go in with a gun or something of that nature, or it might be somebody on a watch list. That's one thing we also do, is we do a watch list test. So when you walk into a building, you walk a driver's license, we immediately do, predominantly for the schools, we do a sex offender check. So if you were on the registry, your name might pop up, and then it would follow the protocol. Maybe you have to have an escort going through the building, that type of thing, so you can't access children. So that's where the division started with the second product line, where APAS was very specifically marine, and then we got into the commercial side of the business as well. And what we did was we looked at each vertical market, meaning we started out with the building market because that was the closest one after September 11th. We
Right.
immediately thought law enforcement was going to be a big one because we got NYPD headquarters, but it really wasn't. The building market started to generate a lot of sales. And then we started to look at what's the next market that would have the need for the justification. And we started to move. We looked at hospitals. The rule of thumb, 1 patient, 5 visitors. Okay, just rule of thumb. So we have hospitals that run 70,000 visitors a month. That's a lot of people going in and out of a hospital not to know who they are.
Right.
That's a lot of handwritten badges when they was, initially doing it to try to issue passes. So it becomes a very laborious situation to someone going the inbound. So this fit very, very well in the hospital market. And it actually streamlined the process, and it helped a lot with emergency management, or where a particular visitor went to a patient's room, and who went there, what time they went there, for investigation purposes, because they have a lot of issues as well. Sometimes they have, a lot of theft goes on, patient things get taken and so on. They get equipment that gets taken. So there's been quite a few arrests as a result of identification through our system. They would find somebody in the camera system that moved out an EKG machine, for example, that looks like it was going out for repair, but it was going into somebody's van to be resold somewhere. And we got a lot of stories. We get a lot of those from the system administrators and the security people. So it was very interesting.
Wow. And then the last question before we get into the COVID-19 part of the discussion, you would form companies prior to SISCO. So are you still connected to those companies? Like, are you still owner, or did you ended up selling those companies?
Well, actually, I sold 4 companies prior to SISCO. I had, 2 of them were security alarm companies. That's really how I got started in the business. When I jumped out of industry, I left Lockheed with my last job. My real job, I always say, it was. And I was an engineer for Lockheed. I ended up going into the security business, the alarm business, and basically all the alarm systems. And that's the company I built up, and I built it into a central monitoring station. And I bought several companies through that company that increased my fold, because I started out and I went from Carmel, New York, which I was physically located, and I had a central station up in Fishkill, New York, which is Dutchess County, and then I went all the way down to Brooklyn. So I covered about 150 miles of New York to New York City, all the way over to Connecticut to New Jersey. So I was pretty much a tri-state company at the time, and serviced a lot of large clients, large commercial clients, and a lot of strip malls. At those times, there was a lot of strip malls, so they all had burglar alarms at the time. And most of them you would find in a liquor store or a jewelry store or a large department store. And then there was a lot of in-between stores. And what we normally did is we put little stickers on the windows. It said, and the company was called Fair Security Systems. I said, protected by Fair Security Systems, and our phone number. And all those alarm companies all those other companies that didn't have a security system, I actually went to them and said, well, you can't afford a security system right now. I said, but in the future, if you like it, I said, let me put these on your windows. At least it keeps the burglars away. They think alarm system, but it was really a marketing plan.
Nice.
If there was a burglary close by, I'd get a phone call. So we would literally take over the strip malls. When I actually sold the company, which I sold to ADT at the time, I had 5,900 subscribers at the time.
Wow.
So that was the one company. Then I had a small access control company, an engineering, a consulting company, and to this day, I still have a small company, but it's real estate right now. It's not a security company. So I've invested in different real estate properties, and that it's controlled through that other company. So I've been through the market a couple of times, mostly in the security business. I have a couple of inventions, which the one that you mentioned before that's still in operation today is a sensor system that's used in the fences. And you've probably seen the razor wire, they call it, or barbed tape.
Right.
Well, I developed a sensor that works inside of that.
Wow.
And it's on the roof of all the New York State facilities that to this day. I know I sold that to another company, but so I don't know what they've done with it, but I understand it's still operational.
Awesome. So how did you transition from New York to Florida? Because it sounds like a lot of your previous business history was up there.
My parents lived in Florida for many years. They lived from New York to Florida and then back from Florida to New York because they missed kids and all that. And so I always visited Florida often. And in my early days when I was at Lockheed. So I always had this desire. I loved Florida. I just liked the warm weather. And when I lived upstate New York. I was about 60 miles north of Manhattan. Snow gets pretty tough, and
Agreed.
I was shoveling snow. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So in 1992, I convinced my wife, let's go to Florida. And I had just recently sold the central monitoring company about that time. And I had about a 2-year gap. That's when I went into consulting business. And I moved down to Florida with the consulting business. And I was basically looking around to do something. Consulting is nice, but it's boring. If you're an engineer, you want to see nuts and bolts. That's kind of what you think of, So that's why I ended up starting. I looked at we call it APAS now, but I didn't know what we were going to call it at the time. And I said that would intrigue me because it was a little bit of hardware and a little bit of software married together. And I didn't know that much about the software business. I just knew I had to get into it, it was that kind of thing. So, and by all means, I'm not a software engineer, but I got the right people to do it.
Right.
So
Gotcha. Awesome. Thanks for that. We're going to take one more commercial break, and then we're directly, like as soon as we come back from this break, guys, we're going to get into the COVID-19 talk. Promise. Stay tuned.
Okay.
At Duke Energy, we deliver electricity and so much more, like free home energy assessments, rebates for energy-saving improvements, payment options to help you better manage your budget, and even bill credits for helping the community use less energy. So no matter what you're doing, we can help you make better energy choices every day. It's just another way we bring power to your life. How much can you save?
And we are back with SISCO founder and CEO Anthony Zagami. Okay, so now we can for sure get into COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on the security industry overall that you've seen, especially given your 40 years of experience. Like how have you seen COVID-19 impact the industry, and then how did SISCO have to pivot in answer to the pandemic?
Well, it impacted everybody. I don't care who you are. You've got some impact on it whatsoever. Some people, obviously went out of business and are going out of business as a result of it. And other people are prospering from it because they happen to fit the marketplace. And that goes from masks to sanitation, sanitizing equipment, all kinds of things of that nature. So looking at the electronic industry, when I saw this happen, in fact, my executive vice president and I had a conversation, and we said, what would be the most likely thing that we can pivot to accommodate our existing customers and new customer base? And that basically related to, we looked at thermal imaging as one. Okay, that's number one on the top, because everybody was going to the temperature reading situation. I said, yeah, but they're all doing it as a standalone device. We should do it as an integrated device. And that meaning say, okay, FastPass is already at a lot of our clients' locations, and we're taking pictures. So why don't we just substitute the camera and put the thermal camera there? We'll have a regular color camera and a thermal camera in the same location. There's almost no equipment readjustment they have to make. They already have the printer. They already have the reader for the driver's license and what have you. And we incorporate that into our software and record the reading, so that they have a documented result of the reading, and put all the bells and whistles on it. If there's an alarm, how do we send the alarm? Is it an audible alarm? Is it just a red box that comes up? Is it somebody gets notified by an SMS message or, those types of things. So we put down a little project plan, which we do with everything on a new product. And we write down all of the things that we need. And the thermal camera was the top of the list. So that was one thing we pivoted to, but very easy pivoted to. We didn't have to change our business strategy. We didn't have to change anything else. We just had to present it out there, say, we've got something new that fits this marketplace really well. And without a lot of adjustment and expense, you can add this to your system as you're ready. That's the new people. So, and we've been doing that for the last month now, and we've got a great response from it. So we started a marketing campaign, and so that was an easy pivot. So, okay, what's next? So the other thing that came up was that people don't want to touch anything.
Right.
They don't want, transfer germs. That's the biggest issue. So we came up with a touchless system. So instead of, it's a change, and not as change as some equipment, but you change the driver's license reader to a no-touch reader, which means that the unit that we have, you just simply read it, and the reader's here, and you just read it with the card. You don't have to touch anything. So the visitor can do that themselves. So we just give them a little bit of instruction, and you give them some graphics and say, okay, read the card here. That automatically populates it. So they have the card in their hand at all times. They maintain that integrity of the card. The second thing is the picture you can take at anything. Camera is is touchless anyway. And then the printer, we make a change in the printer, which allows the printer to, it's a guillotine printer. So the pass comes out and it stops, and then a guillotine internally in the printer cuts the pass off, and it just drops out in front of the visitor. So they just pick it up and now put it on their apparel, and you're good to go. So touchless became another product. And once we announced it, almost had 25 hospitals call us for it. And we're putting it away. The other side of that is we have the non-concurrent visitors. And what that means is when a person goes, they never really tracked before the number of people that are in a room, even though we have it in the system. We built it in for another purpose. Nobody used it because they allow 4 or 5 people in the room at any one time. And that was the name, like I said, the 1 to 5 rule. That you'd have 5 visitors at some point, and sometimes maybe you all together. But nobody tracked how many people were in a room at any one time. So now with CV19 out there, they're limiting the number of visitors, and they're only allowing 1 visitor at a time, or maybe 2 visitors at a time. So we've then turned on that switch, which has been already there. We've added a couple of little features to it, and they have to put an exit reader in, so that when people are leaving the hospital now, they're exiting versus just leaving without a notification. So now we have a tracking mechanism of when they came in, how many people are in the room, when they left, when another person is allowed to actually enter the room. So, and we've got a lot of people that want that as well. So that's that's a third item that we developed for CV19. The fourth one, it came out of the marine industry. And it was a spin-off of a product that we already had developed for what we call a suspicious item search. So if there was a bomb or biological chemical threat on a ship or a missing person, they would use our system with the PDAs and go all these areas to inspect the areas. So that, and before they were doing it again with clipboards and radios. So there are thousands of locations, thousands. So when a ship has a threat, outside threat, and say that, well, there's a bomb on the ship, now you got to shut everything down, and they got to start inspecting the entire ship and look and try to locate it, and then determine what the area of the danger is for this. How many rooms do I have to clear? How many areas do I have to clear up and above too, below this deck, above that deck, and so on. So it's a major process. We developed that for Norwegian Cruise Lines, and we call it SIPS, Suspicious Item Search Plan, which is an electronic way of inspecting a ship. So at a meeting that we had here at the facility when COVID-19 hit the street, this was early on. This was in March, actually. I said, why can't we take our suspicious item search plan and turn it into a sanitizing program? Because they're going to need to know what rooms, what areas have been sanitized.
Mm-hmm.
And we all scratched our heads and said, that's not a pretty good idea. Let's take that a little couple of steps further, build a little business plan around it, and indicate what we can do for this, what we can do for the industry. And I said, but not only keep it resonant to ships, let's move it into the commercial market. Schools, hospitals, multi-tenant buildings, office complexes, whatever, all need this type of situation. And again, it's a PDA that they would have, and you would put these RFID radio frequency tags or barcoded tags in the rooms in the areas that required inspection. But what we got from it, we talked to the industry, and we talked to Royal Caribbean was one of our big supporters on this, and they were talking directly to CDC and Coast Guard, and I said, well, what do you need? If we were able to supply something like this, what do you need in addition to what we normally do for the inspection side of this? Well, what came out of it was, well, okay, we need to know who did it. Okay, we need to know what the time they did. Okay, we got that. We need to know what chemicals they used. Okay, and how to capture the information on the chemicals. We needed to know how many times it had to be cycled. Do we have to do this once a day, once every 3 days, or 3 times a day, or whatever the case was? And all these things are different because you have food preparation areas versus areas for swimming or those types of things. You have recreation areas and so on. So each one of these has a classification for sterilization. So we added all of those extra fields into this, and we're now calling the product captains, at least for the marine market. And my God, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's cleaning and sanitation, something or other program. I should have had prepared for that, but I don't have it. But it's called captains. So that would satisfy the sanitizing process and tracking of it. And then, of course, Coast Guard said they want a certification once these areas have been inspected. So individuals are required to physically sign off on it, and we give them the electronic means of signing off on it. And so that now that can be transferred to Coast Guard. Coast Guard says, okay, you're good to go. So that may have a very big impact on the industry for them to start the sale again, to have a device like that, a solution like that. And we're about 2-3 weeks away from completion on it, because we've got added a lot of different things, to actually satisfy the industry. And we're looking for information. Anybody that's out there in the marine industry that can provide us additional information that they may want inside of a program like this. The business case is very different than what we're used to. We're talking about health-related things, so it's a little bit different than just the regular muster drills things.
Absolutely. So very quickly, guys, we're actually going to show you a clip of, he listed about 4 or 5 different devices, but we're going to show you clips of the first 2 solutions that he described about the contactless system, like the full walkthrough of the entire system, and then also the camera, the thermal camera, and how that works. So stay tuned. We're going to show the whole system first, and then we're going to run the clip with the camera, the thermal camera for you guys. So watch this.
Hi, I'm here to see patient Mary Smith.
Oh, great. If you can take a step back, I'm going to get your photograph.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Can I see your driver's license, please?
Sure.
All right. If you can, scan the back of your driver's license. All right. Thank you. I'm going to print out your badge. If you can, put it on. And Mary Smith is in room 302.
Okay, awesome. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi. Are you getting ready to leave us?
Yes.
All right. If you can, please remove your badge and scan it in front of the reader. Thanks so much.
Isn't that awesome, guys? So
Sure.
yeah, and here's the quick demo on the thermal camera. So take a look at this.
Hi, I'm here to see patient Mary Smith.
Oh, great. If you don't mind taking a step back, we'll get your temperature.
Of course.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on. So that's a quick demonstration of how
Yeah,
that particular system works. So
doesn't add any more time to the process. It's actually make that. So
right,
it all is incorporated into one.
right. So definitely congrats on that. And it looks like the name of the game for your company is saving time, or at least as much as possible. It looks like
Absolutely.
that's been the staple.
Well, accuracy, one of the
Mhm.
things, accuracy and information. That's a big part of it. We also added a piece to it. I didn't mention it before, was analytics. We've added an analytics engine to the FastPass 7, which is the new product. That's
Mhm.
be able to, for business cases, they want to track things, locations where people came from, different types of what age groups came in, things of that nature. So they're able to pull that all through and put up graphs, charts, and all kinds of things that be useful for maybe marketing, who knows, whatever they want to use it for. Uh, to basically tracking trends. This wasn't available before in any of the products, and I don't think there's anybody actually doing that out there, putting the analytics side of it in. But we incorporated that into the new FastPass 7. So that's all out there now, and that's hopefully our marketing people are cracking the whip and or
Right.
cracking the Zoom, I should say.
Right. Right. Especially given what you were saying in terms of how these things work in terms of landing clients, where you have to present to a board of people or a panel of people.
Right. It's actually very interesting as far as the communications go, because I think people are much more receptive to it than a house call.
Hmm.
I know it sounds silly, but we were always used to face-to-face meetings, handshaking, all of that. And of course, with COVID-19, that went away.
Right.
The handshaking part of it as well. But now people are much more receptive to video conferencing. And with the addition, the bandwidth is a good part of it, because we're able to get the streaming very much faster, and the audio is coming in much
Right.
more, so on. So much of that is going on, and it makes things a lot easier to deal with customers, because they're not opposed to taking their day out and meeting somebody. So yeah, I'm sure
Right.
at my desk, why not? That type of thing. So I think that's a big plus to it, and that'll probably continue in the future as being much more. Even when we get down to the relaxed part, where we get an actual vaccine for this, we will probably use the video conferencing a lot more than we did before, because it's now has become commonplace.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Right. It's just more convenient in some
yeah,
cases.
absolutely. So
Yeah. So talk about the economic impact that your company has encountered as a result of COVID-19, or has it? Like, have you had to apply for any kind of economic assistance? Have you had to furlough or lay off anybody at your company, or have you guys been pretty well sustained throughout this process?
actually, we've been pretty well sustained. Okay, we didn't have to lay off or furlough anyone. Everybody kept working. What we did
Okay.
do is we have 38 people, so 25 of them went to work at home. When
Okay.
their jobs were all more relatively around computers. Developers were predominantly our tech support department. Those people can run the support. We've had soft phones, so anything that comes in from coming in from the customers gets routed to the soft phone, so they can pick it up on a headset at their home and do the support on it. So that was no problem. We had shipping and receiving; those type of people had to stay here because we were getting things in and out, but they
Right.
didn't. Most of the managers stayed in the facility. I did too. I only took a couple of days at home, and then I didn't like it. I came to the office.
At least you're honest.
It's okay to work at home for okay, but do a couple of days of it, and it doesn't deal. I don't work well at home. Too many distractions. My wife wants me to do too many things. She thinks I'm on vacation.
Ah, there you
I'm just
go.
kidding. If you're watching, honey, I'm sorry. But
Gotcha.
So we worked out very well. We did apply for PPP money, and we got
Okay.
PPP money, which was fine, which sustained the payroll, for the time that we lacked 3 months of sales. So really, that's what happened. Everything shut down. So there were
Right.
no sales calls per se to be made, and that's when we reverted to pushing the development side of this, and we started to work heavily on the marketing side. So we brought a very smart gal on board as our director of marketing. She's got a lot of experience. Nikki, I don't know if you've had any communications with Nikki, but she actually started pushing the social media. She's an expert in that area. We're going to update websites. She's been responsible for getting me in front of the public, like your show, for example, which I feel is a great way for people to get their product known. And also understand what the trials and tribulations of these
Right.
epidemics cause, these pandemics cause. But that's some of the things that pushed us in another direction, which we started to market much more heavily than we normally had done. And I think because of the obvious dip in sales that we had in the first 3 months. But now what we expect is from the new products that we've developed as a result of it, we expect that the third and fourth quarters will be very good and probably offset the deficit that we had in the second quarter. First quarter was fine. We were chugging along just like we were doing previous year. We were ahead by 10% revenues, and then all of a sudden, bloop, March 3rd came along, and then wow, what happened? So when everything closed down, of course, hospitals, everything shut down. You couldn't get anybody or everybody was scrambling, for their own purposes to get things collected. So they were only focusing on what they needed to do to keep their businesses operational. And of course, that was a lot had to do with I'm not talking to anybody at the moment, about buying anything. That's the issue. Until the light, they saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and they realized that they need devices like the thermal cameras, like the no-touch systems, and other things, because now sanitizing products became very popular, obviously.
Very, yeah.
That and toilet paper you couldn't find on the shelves.
For months, literally months.
So, but that's just what it is. It's everybody went into panic mode, and that's what happened. So there was a run on toilet paper and paper towels and tissues, and they still hard to get sanitary wipes and all kinds of other things. So, but it is what it is. So you got to deal with it and work along with it. So we are able to survive all of that. Everybody's still working. Nobody missed a paycheck. And hopefully I've got a lot of happy employees. Everybody is back. We have a few people that are still on working at home for convenience purposes at all. And we do our masks in the office.
Right.
Social distancing. We have thermal cameras coming in to our facility, so we make sure we record everybody's temperature on a daily basis, and we in and out. So we have complete records and history of everybody coming and going to our own facility. So we're practicing what we preach, so to speak. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to take another quick commercial break and come back and talk a little bit more about Anthony Zagami as the person, and also kind of tap into some of his other expertise. So stay tuned. We're going to come right back.
We wanted to move back home to be closer to his family. We decided to go with pods because things were stressful enough.
We weren't sure how long we were going to need storage for, so we needed something that was flexible, and then they can deliver the container to wherever we move to.
We haven't found the perfect house yet, but we're still looking.
All right, guys, and we are back with SISCO CEO and founder Anthony Zagami. Welcome back. And so you touched on it before, particularly given your expertise, your experience with 9/11, and part of your bio, you mentioned that you also do a lot of lectures on counterterrorism. So I just wanted to have you kind of flesh that out a little bit more for our audience. What does that look like for you? Do you do a lot of trade shows and do particular seminars on it, or what does that look like for you?
One of the things that I did was I got very interested. I get involved with the law enforcement communities quite a bit. So our local police departments, sheriff's department, and we belong to a lot of the agencies and some of the shows. which is is one of them, which is American Society for Industrial Security. And in that is it's a very, very large group. It's probably the largest in the world of security professionals, and that relates to directors of security for hotels, for corporations, for businesses, engineers, you name it. Anybody that's in the security industry usually belongs to that. And I go back to 1976 as I started. Wow. I have a plaque on my wall in back of me over here that shows that tenure. So I've been in a very long time. So you make relationships with people over the years through these organizations, and some of them would be just business relationships, and some became very good friends through the industry. And what's happened is I got involved with law enforcement in the local community because I got to know the chief of police in Jupiter, Florida, and we became very friendly, and we started talking about, and he says, I have a chiefs association, and he says, I'd like you to join the chiefs association. So I said, okay, I don't know what that is, but I'll join it. So what it was is a bunch of local businessmen that got together and started to talk about the problems in the industry. And at the time when I joined it, school shootings were extremely high. You're going back to Connecticut, you had the ones in Fort Lauderdale, and a lot of interested parties were trying to figure out how to fix the problem, from putting people with guns in the classroom to devices to God knows what, how do we protect our children? So what we did was we had a group of people in a meeting, and I said, you know what, we should start a subcommittee and take a look at the problem and get a couple of professionals. We had a couple of very, very high-end guys from FBI, retired FBI agents, and some of the people that had much more experience than I had in the local world, in the real world, outside of the devices and software. But what really happens, human relations, human factors going on. So we sat down and had meetings at my office here, and we came up with a group of people to come up with a set of standards. Things that could be used, that the general public could use. And of course, this all relates back to the active shooter side of this, where you deal with an active shooter event. So everybody's trying to solve it a different way. Some just from notification purposes. There are things out there that, you can lock down the classrooms, you use certain devices, block the windows, put wedges against the door, things of that nature. All practical stuff, everything practical stuff. But none of it's been publicized, not to any great extent. That the Justice Department came out with some standards about active shooter, and we got a lot of that information as well. And we started but it was too complicated for the general public. So the average person could take this and say, oh, geez, I got to read all of this, try to figure this out, do all of that. So we took a set of standards and we developed it and boiled it down to something that you could use, to 4 or 5 items that would make sense of if you had an active shooter event. Okay, it didn't involve a lot of devices. It was local things that you had on hand that could be used. Some things you'd have to buy, but very inexpensive but very effective. Okay, for particular. The biggest part of it is the process. What happens in an active shooter situation, like a fire drill? You evacuate the building, okay, but there's a process for that. How do you evacuate the building? Where do you go? If the fire is over here, you go the opposite direction, or those kinds of things. If there's an active shooter and you don't know where he is, what do? You have shelter in place, you have run away from the thing, or you have fight. Okay, there's those 3 items basically that they came up with. That if you have not, the fight is your last alternative. To try to distract them and fight them. If you have nowhere else to go, you don't just stand there and let them shoot you. You try to fight them. And if you're a group, you got a chance. If you can attack them properly. And we got involved in some of that. Okay, and we created some videos. There are videos out there for this purpose, and some of them are very good. They should be watched. So that was pretty much my involvement in counterterrorism. There's more to it than that, where you get outside of the box, where you start thinking about what's from outside the country, people coming in and counterterrorism stuff. But they were better experts than I am at this. But we looked at very specifically the school solutions, and considering that an active shooter is a terrorist, and that would be that type of thing. So, being my experience in the corrections industry, and I did a lot of prisons back then. And I did that with perimeter security system, which mostly on the outside of the prison, not internally. Use your camera systems, your basic detection systems around the perimeter, buried line systems, that, you know, all of these shaker systems for the fence, vibration sensors and whatnot. I got a lot of experience on perimeter protection. So when you're looking at how to protect a facility, for saying not necessarily a prison, but even, you know, a nuclear facility, I did a few of those as well. What kind of level of detection do you need? How early should it be? How far should the perimeter be out to be effective so that the response forces can come and take care of the problem? So what you're buying in you have barriers that prevent, that cause delay in what you want to create, delay in channelizing people into a certain area. You have detection systems that will detect them, and surveillance systems to augment the detection system so you can know where they are, how many, what kind, are they carrying guns, weapons, and to be able to put those pieces together so that the response force, whatever that might be, whether you know, military or, you know, commercial, knows how to deal with the threat. And that's my background in counterterrorism from that point of view. It's not intelligence or anything like that. So but it's really how somebody trying to attack a facility, in how do you counter it? You know, what's the countermeasures that are needed, from equipment to people to devices to et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of my experience factor in it, and I did very well with it. That was my consulting business. I did really well because I got several consulting jobs in designing countermeasures for nuclear facilities is one of them. Okay, so I work with several large engineering firms and put a lot of those ideas on the table for them to consider. So,
gotcha. And thanks for sharing all of that, because even the school safety, that conversation never went away, but it's now compounded with COVID-19 and the current national debate about how many kids are coming back to school in person, who's going to go virtual. So yeah, thank you for sharing your expertise and your involvement in that conversation. For sure, that's a key conversation. All right, so we're going to take one final commercial break, guys. And for those of you who follow my programming, you guys already know this is the quickest one. It's about 15 seconds, so just enough for you to get a sip of water, maybe wipe your nose, whatever you got to do. But we'll be right back to wrap up our interview with Anthony Zagami. Hold on.
At Taco John's, you can expect one thing: so good. As in quality ingredients used in tacos and burritos made just for you. Every single bite.
So good.
Expect nothing less at Taco John's.
All right. So thank you so much for your time, and Mrs. Zagami, appreciate you. So we're going to wrap up with the last couple of questions here as it relates to business. I want to kind of get your take on kind of the business side of things. But what is given the number of companies that you've formed and you've been able to sell, what is your advice for anybody that's getting into the security industry or, you know, the tech industry, and then your advice for folks just getting into business, starting a new business in general?
Money.
That's the name of the game.
Or you have enough money. That's one of the biggest issues that you'll come across. To have an idea of going into business, and I've had many people do this, go into business and have a great idea and have no money, and it fizzles. Okay. So the first one is money, money, money. You can't do anything without it. That's number one. You can have a great idea, but make sure it's backed up. Understand the marketplace that you're going to be involved with, because understand the competition, understand what's going on in the marketplace. What is it that you're developing? How many people will need it? Is it a lot of people, or is it just a particular? See, a lot of ideas are created just for one particular application only. You have to think out of the box and look at a more universal thing. So when I did this with the original FastPass, I mean, APAS was pointed at a specific market, but you know, if the cruise industry failed completely, I didn't have a business. So I was kind of lucky, but I had a lot of carriers that we picked up. So the different carriers also gave me security in the industry itself. When I went to FastPass, you had the same issue. However, the market verticals became vast. So, I mean, I can only name a few off the bat that we focused on, you know, starting at schools, hospitals, multi-tenant buildings, law enforcement, the big five so far. But there's more than that. There are site locations. There's all kinds of businesses out there that require this or something like it. So know your market. You need money. Know your market. Know what pitfalls that you're going to be addressing as you go forward. Pick the right people. Grow the company. Pick the right people, and they need to be smarter than you. Okay, I know they do. They need to be smarter than you at their expertise. I'm a good engineer, but I'm a lousy marketeer. It's that simple, and I'll be the first to admit it. But I'm not a marketing guy. I'm an engineer. I think differently than a marketing person does, and so hire a good marketing person to take you field forward. I'm an okay salesman, but I'm not a great salesman. Hire good salespeople. So what I am is a good manager. I can oversee things. I can see things coming a long way off. I look at the big picture. That's what a CEO is supposed to do. Look at the big picture. Look at the next couple of years down the road. Where is the business going? Where is the world going, so to speak? All right, we're going to make some turns here and there, like COVID-19, but be able to adjust and adapt. And and that's what a lot of people, good managers are able to do that very easily. So the big one is money. But that way, it sounds so pretentious, but money is what really drives things, because that allows you to get the right people. It allows you to it gives you time. It gives you breathing room. Okay. You're not always sweating the next paycheck, those things of that nature, because you put yourself too much under a lot of stress. And I did that in the beginning because I didn't have any money.
Right.
I did everything in the beginning. I did from the accounting and all that. So my background, I have an engineering degree, but I also have an accounting degree. So
right.
I would say that the left and right side of my brain are always in conflict. Here's the fun stuff and here's the bean counters. So a little bit of both works together, those types of things. So those are my recommendations about business.
Awesome. That's a great place to wrap it up. And thank you again so much for taking the time to be on the show and for sharing with us the latest updates with your system and the way that you've been able to pivot with COVID-19 and still being able to serve the industry. So we appreciate your time and that business advice. Like, that alone was worth the price of admission, guys. That was some serious jewels. No problem. And people can go to SISCO.ciscocorp.com if you want to find out a little bit more about Anthony Zagami's company, if you want to find out more about the systems that he has in place and the newest developments. So you'll see the link in the description below to find out more. But in the meantime, that does do it here for us at the FNN Business Talk for your Wednesday. Thank you again so much, Mr. Zagami, for taking the time. We appreciate you.
It was my pleasure to be here, Mellissa. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, guys. And you guys will see me again this afternoon for the FNN Evening News Rundown. I'll be here at 5 p.m. with your latest headlines. And since it is Wednesday, #Worker Wednesday, Angel Perry will be back as our guest analyst, and we'll be talking some serious political talk and policing. So you'll want to be here for that conversation. And in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning into FNN Business Talk. You have a great rest of your afternoon. You take care.